Everybody come see us on tour. We'll be in Columbus, Dayton, Cleveland, Cincinnati, Lexington, Kentucky, Burbank, California, and Honolulu. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for tickets.
Now, you also mentioned that you thought, Vincent Bugliosi has always been played up as this iconic hero in the media. Now, you suggest that one of the reasons they might have picked him is because he was deeply compromised. They could get him to do what he wanted. So how was he compromised? How does the real Bugliosi contrast with the public image?
Well, before Vince became famous with this case, I mean, I don't know if we've even said it, but not only did he prosecute these people and send them to prison in the most highly covered criminal trial until OJ, in American history. Before that, he'd been in the DA's office about 2 or 3 years, and it was understood the guy was really smart, really ambitious, really aggressive. But what people didn't know was that 2 or 3 years before he got the case, he had become convinced that he wasn't the father of his son. That it's such a cliche, but he believed that his milkman had impregnated his wife, and he became obsessed with proving or disproving that. And in 1968, he started stalking the milkman, following him, trying to get him to do a blood test, threatening, using the DA's office to get information on him. All of that stuff was found out, and Bugliosi should have been arrested for this. And instead, there was a meeting, and I have all the information in the book, where he apologized to the milkman and his wife, who he'd been harassing for about a year, including kidnapping their daughter from school and taking her to a toy store and letting her buy whatever she wanted. The daughter told me this. This isn't in the book, the kidnapping part. I found this out when the book came out. She got in touch with me.
It's like a horror movie.
Yeah, it's like a horror movie. Then dropping the girl off with all these gifts on the front lawn so the parents could see what he was capable of doing. I mean, he was a fucking nut. So anyway, he should have been disbarred, prosecuted, and never allowed to be a lawyer again. But instead, it was kind of quietly covered up. And it came out, wasn't the first one to report it. It came out when he ran for district attorney of Los Angeles, after he became famous with the prosecution and then the book, Helter Skelter, which to this day is the best-selling true crime book of all time. But that brought him down because the milkman and his wife actually went public when they saw that he was going to run for DA. And even though they had signed an agreement, to be quiet about this, they violated that because they thought he'd be too dangerous. And he lost the election because of that. But the guy, again, he was ambitious. He ran again a year later for Attorney General of California. But in that 1 year period, he had had an affair with a woman who got pregnant, and he ordered her to have an abortion, and she wouldn't, but she lied to him and said she'd had it. And he called the doctor because he was Vince Bugliosi, and you get a doctor to break their vow of privacy. And when he found out she hadn't aborted the child, he went to her house and beat the hell out of her, and she miscarried. And then after he left, she went to the Santa Monica Police Department and reported it. And it was in the papers the next day. And he went back to her apartment that day with his secretary and basically held her captive for about 3 or 4 hours until she finally agreed to go back to the police and say she had made the whole story up. I mean, all this stuff is crazy. And this is just, a little bit of an illustration of what a wild card Vince Bugliosi was. And if anyone would do the CIA's bidding, it was him. And then what did he do 20 years later? Is he wrote Reclaiming History, which was supposed to be the definitive debunking of the JFK assassination conspiracies, to show that once and for all that Oswald did it alone and there was no conspiracy. I believe that was also part of what he was obligated to do with the agencies that I believe he was working for them all that time.
Okay, so ultimately, and correct me if I'm wrong, your work basically suggests that Manson was a CIA experiment gone wrong, and that his contact was really at the Haight-Ashbury Free Clinic when Jolly West. It began there, and he picked up these MK Ultra techniques, which he went and then used on his followers, and he was either directed to commit these murders or it was an accidental byproduct of what they were doing with him. Is that a fair characterization?
It's close, yeah. And again, it's better than I can do because I don't even want to say what you just said because I can't specify.
In the words of Rocky Balboa, sue me for what?
Yeah. No, there was a Alan Shefflin, who was a psychiatrist and a lawyer who teaches up, I think, at Santa Clara, who wrote one of the first books about MK Ultra called The Mind Manipulators. It's impossible to get right now. And it's so thorough and so sourced. I brought him all of this evidence I had, and it's in the book, my book. I said to him, I go, Dr. Shefflin, do you think this was the murders of Sharon Tate and the others was an MK Ultra experiment gone wrong? And he said, no, I think it was an MK Ultra experiment gone right. So I still don't know. I can't imagine that they would want, this 26 or 7-year-old actress who's 8.5 months pregnant that he stabbed 8-10 times while she's pleading for the life of her baby and calling out for her mother. I don't know the answer to that, whether it was wrong or right, but I do believe that Manson was manipulated and provoked, and there were secret people behind that who were covered up by law enforcement, Bugliosi and others.
All right, just one last thing, because I'll kick myself if I don't ask you this. So Melcher said, Vince said this would never come out. Something that strikes me at the very least, with all I've read about this, with all of the celebrities who come in and out of this story, because Sanders makes this point in his book too, that everyone in Hollywood seemed to know Manson until this happened.
Yeah.
And they all ran away. So at the very least, is it fair to say Manson was much more ingrained in the scene than anyone wanted to admit? At the very least, there was an effort to cover up those connections.
Yeah, absolutely. And the only two people that did admit to it, Terry Melcher and Dennis Wilson. Terry lied on the witness stand. I've proven that. And Dennis Wilson never had to testify, and Dennis knew him better than anyone. And nobody could ever give me a good answer for how Dennis escaped having to testify in the stand. People who knew him best said he wouldn't lie for Bugliosi, and that's why he never took the stand. Bugliosi could have subpoenaed him, but he knew not to, because unlike Terry, he couldn't be, he wouldn't lie about what happened. And he, again, I didn't report this. Dennis was dead by the time I was doing my reporting. He told numerous interviewers that one day he would tell the truth about Charles Manson and why those murders happened. And then he suddenly drowns in Marina Del Rey when he's, I think, 40 or 41.
Yes, which he gets into in Weird Tales of Laurel Canyon as well. A lot of people think that was intentional. For anyone who doesn't know, the Manson family basically lived at Dennis Wilson's house for a couple of months?
About 2 or 3 months in '68. And it's really when they cohesed and then moved en masse out to the Spahn Ranch. And then the next year was all led up to what happened in August of '69.
All right. Tom, it was great meeting you. You got to come to town so we could. Do you still have your license? I'm still licensed. Are you still licensed?
No. That thing expired a long time. I do think about it from time to time. I don't know if I'd pass all the tests you have to take now.
Well, now you have to take a veterinary test.
A medical test?
A veterinary test. You have to. There's
a
vet there.
Yeah. I'm not good with science, as you can see in my books. Yeah. So.
All right. Well, the book is called Chaos, Charles Manson, the CIA, and the Secret History of the 60s. Tom O'Neill, it was great to meet you. Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Thank you, Tom. Great meeting.
Bye-bye.
Bye, so long.
All right, everybody. That's Tom O'Neill. Thanks for that interview. That was great. That was terrific.
Everybody, come see us on tour. We'll be in Columbus, Dayton, Cleveland, Cincinnati, Lexington, Kentucky, Burbank, California, and Honolulu. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for tickets.